Welcome to today's episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I am one of your hosts, David Gilliland. We have the privilege of having Hemant Varshney with us. He is a founder of Digicom, a digital marketing company. And welcome to the show, Hemant.
David, thank you for having me on today.
We're just delighted and to have you and to talk with one more great business owner. Great meaning we've made it this far. Man, sometimes it can be a bumpy road. Amy, can you tell us just a little bit about your business and how you got started? How you decided to do this?
Sure. So I guess I'll take it a little, I'll take it back to the beginning of how I got into digital really quickly. And that all started with a bunch of YouTube videos 16, 17 years ago now. I was tasked with trying to bring in more revenue. At the time for my father's business, I was in college, and he gave me $500 essentially. And he's like, all right, what can you do with this? And for context, my father's business was garment manufacturing. So he supplied to Macy's, Sears, Belk Dillard. And he used to go to a lot of trade shows like Magic and Sourcing. And at the time, he didn't have a website. And so I watched a few videos on how to build a GoDaddy site and how to set up some Google Ads campaigns. And what I found the most fascinating was the ability to drive traffic to the site, but then really it was about tracking. I could track that, hey, we received a lead on these specific keywords, and on $500, my dad had several POs booked, large POs, like typical POs are like $40,000-$50,000 a PO, and then there's reorders that happen, and I was just like, wow, this is incredible. You can drive real growth for businesses, and ultimately that $500 investment was so ROI positive, especially when you can compare it to, hey, I'm going to a conference, right? You're spending thousands of dollars in a booth, and then traveling, um, and that's how I got started in marketing. Fast forward, I worked as a consultant. I was a head of growth on the brand side. Built out an agency prior to Digicom, taking it up to about $100 million run rate, and learned a lot of different things along the way. But ultimately, what I wanted to do at Digicom, which we're on year 9 actually, we're going on year 10. Founded it in 2015, May 5th, 2015. I was looking at the docs actually earlier today, which is funny. And the goal, when I first started, was to take my experience on both the brand side and the agency side and kind of bring the worlds together, because when I worked on either side, there was always a disconnect. And we typically work with a lot of venture-backed startups or privately owned companies that have either raised $2 million pre-series B or are doing $2 million plus. And there's the disconnect is that, for these brands in the nascent stages, they need a head of growth. They need somebody to help with their budgeting and planning and their P&L. It's fascinating to me how many people don't understand what their break-even points are. They need somebody to help develop creatives, provide feedback on, their website, and then buy the media. And each one of these skill sets is its own specialty in, growth marketing, in advertising, and, there are specific consultants, agencies, or headcount resources dedicated to each one of these skill sets. And so slowly over time, as the business started to grow, my goal was to add on these services as just part of what we do, because it's all connected. And now, fast forward to now, we've worked with a ton of different clients. We typically have an 80% retention rate. We've averaged that the last 3 years. And we've seen some tremendous growth. And ultimately, we've helped our clients grow, a ton across the board in different verticals.
Very cool. Amazing what $500 can do if someone's really curious and digs into it.
Yeah. YouTube University.
Well, that's fantastic. And it sounds like you've gained some other learning and knowledge along the way. Now, as you've been growing your business, and I mean, now you're employing several people. You're well over 1 million, and you're running this business and running it well. What have you learned? What are some nuggets and things you kind of gathered that maybe our listeners, other seven-figure business owners, could benefit from?
Okay, so I think there are different stages of growth, right? So from $0 to $1 million, you're a founder, you're doing 9 million different things at all times. And so you have certain processes in place. And as you are starting to offboard some of these processes to other stakeholders in your business, it's kind of scary. You've created these processes and it's gotten you this far. 1 million to the next, 1 million to say 3 million, you're onboarding new folks, and the processes you set up from 0 to 1 million probably aren't best for 1 to 3, right? And it's okay to tear them down. And we just brought on a new director of growth. His name's Jake. I used to work with Jake. He was on my team years ago, and as he's going through onboarding last week, all I said to him was like, "Hey, we're doing things in a this specific manner. If we need to tear it all down, let's tear it all down. My goal for you this week is not so much, hey, you are learning about client accounts. It's business operations more so. What can we do better? And how can we change so that we are positioned to go from 2 million to 5 million? And Jake already has that experience. We've done it together, and so he's been tearing down a bunch of different processes. And we had a new person start literally today. We have a new person starting next week as well, new team member. And the first thing we did was tear down the training doc and applied some newer processes in the training doc to help folks get up to speed faster. And we have a feedback loop, right? It's at the end of the training we ask, hey, what can we have done better? And we've always done this, but now we're kind of putting that process in steroids. There are other functions in every business owner's business and what they're working on, where you have a process. And again, just because you have that process and you set it up doesn't mean it's the most optimal way to do it. We have to get feedback. We have to learn about how we can do it better. And I think approaching that with no ego is important. Yes, you have your experience and it's like, oh, this doesn't work because of this, but we didn't try it this way. Okay, maybe you try it this way, right? It's about testing and learning, um, which is ultimately what we do across building startups, breaking stuff. Accidents happen in the lab that can be very good or maybe not great, but it's all about learning and building and moving forward.
I love that. What a nugget. Let me see if I can tease a couple of them out for the listeners. We had one piece was the recognition that the stage of business you're at, once you've left the million, you're going from 1 to 3 million. If you feel stuck at all, if you feel like something's not working right, it's because the old formula doesn't work at this stage.
Yeah.
You've got to look at it, and it's time to break some of the processes that worked from 0 to 1 million to be able to get from 1 to 3. Huge nugget in there. And then the other one is, you mean all your processes. I mean, you were even talking about like onboarding this employee, I'm changing this, to how do we deliver the value we deliver every day, the customer experience and all the different phases on there, that you have a feedback loop built in. It says for everything we're doing, how did it go? What should we look at? Is it time to break it to make this better?
Exactly. And again, it's a no ego, no ego kind of mindset. Like one more nugget of information is we have been iterating on our website for years, right? And last year we brought on a new head of business development who was just like, hey, like he was kind of tiptoeing around like, hey, we need to do the site better. And like I had worked directly on the site for years, right? So and he was tiptoeing and it was just like, Ryan, Like, just say it to me like it is. Well, like, well, what do you want to do? He's like, I think we need to do X, Y, and Z on the site and lead with, these specific items. And I was just like, okay, why, like, why was that so tough to tell me? He's like, because someone's website is so near and dear to their heart that, like, I didn't want to, like, offend you or anything. I was like, if we can do it better, we should do it better. Like, it's the only way we're going to keep growing. So,
Yeah,
that's just very important.
absolutely. And I do think we get in the way. Here's some of the typical lines. I'm going to share ones I felt and ones I've seen in others. Where we say things like, "Hey, look, figure out how we do it first before you decide to go breaking something. We've figured something out. We hired you. You didn't hire us, or whatever." Right? They start feeling this kind of thought in there, or this has been generating this much value. I didn't ask you to look at this. I asked you to work on this other thing. Why are you spending time over here? And uh, they're little ego flares that we don't always recognize, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We feel judged quickly. We may have our hesitancy about that person just a little bit, and this is kind of proving that they don't know their stuff or whatever. All ego, all ego. I love it. Thanks for sharing that, Heyman.
Yeah, of course.
Um, well, you're growing now. You're doing the thing. It sounds like you've got some good stuff figured out. What are you bumping up against in this growth? I mean, you've got more and more team members. You probably can't be the marketing expert day to day now. You've got others doing it. How, how are you shifting, transitioning? What kind of questions have you got?
Sure. I think you brought up this great point of like, hey, you can't be the expert in X, Y, and Z in your business because you're running the business, right? And that is spot on. Like, it is very, very spot on. Every morning we do a stand up, like any tech company, does. I know we're marketing, but uh, we talk about, hey, this is what's going on in all of our client accounts. Here's what we need to do. Here's how we're kind of resourcing for the day. And like this morning, like I always like to be on a few client accounts. I need to be close to fingers to keyboard so that when I'm talking to other business owners, one, I understand what's going on. Um, and two, I know how to help them. Uh, and so, I had launched a series of tests the last couple of weeks for one of our clients, and um, some worked, some didn't work as well. And so, like you had mentioned, you're probably not the expert. So now the experts on my team is like, hey guys, I've tested X, Y, and Z. Can we spend time later today to review these tests? Because like they've almost always won for me, and this is the first time I'm actually having challenges on both ends. So like let's chat through maybe what we can do here, and not for them to go and execute. It's very much a brainstorm so I can run this, so I also understand what the team is going through when certain tests don't pan out. It's very, very important.
Yeah. So what's the challenge you're facing? Like what's hard
Yeah.
for you when doing this?
uh Challenge I'm facing. So that's a great question. I think, if I think about running the business in, there's partnership, which is, working directly with clients, and that's one bucket. How do we how do we improve our client services, retention? And so like I have team members that are dedicated to helping solve some of those challenges, which we speak about on Mondays, typically at 11, about, hey, here are the challenges we went through last week. And it's just three people. It's me and my two co-founders, kind of breaking things down and then putting, processes in place to help. There's the business development challenge, right? Where it's like, are we onboarding the right business? Is the partner right for us? Are we right for them? How do we get more business? And that's the portion where I have been more focused on. End of 2023 into 2024, essentially, we flipped our script. We had a ton of inbound, which has been great. But last year, especially in the space we play in, startup venture capital, SVB bank failures, tightening of credit, This impacted a lot of different brands in different ways. And so flipping the script was like, okay, how do we go meet our partners? And so we did a couple big conferences last year, right, where we had a booth. Partners came, met us, signed deals through there. And then in January, we flipped the script again, where it was like, okay, you know what? Like the cost benefit analysis of going to a show like I used to with my father, and having our own booth costs X thousand dollars. If we sign, X number of clients, here's our return. Here's how long it takes us to break even on gross revenue, not even on net. Um, the net numbers don't make sense because it takes much longer, right? And so with that, it was working with again Ryan, where we went to conferences and went booth to booth to booth to booth instead of having our own booth. So CES, we did Magic, we did Expo West, Fancy Food, and flipping the script was being very uncomfortable. But hey, talking to all of these founders across the categories we work in, right, and understanding what their pain points are, and then creating like the service matrix to help solve that pain point for them. But what's also fundamentally different is inbound versus outbound, right? Inbound partners are ready to move forward right away, or within like 2 weeks. Let's just say that's the typical deal cycle range. Outbound, meeting these partners, running these audits. We before we take on any business, we audit their work to understand, hey, can we hit your goals or not? And then we provide a high level plan. This is without any contract signed. Um, so we ran this audit for a number of clients, and it's like, okay, cool. We are considering working with you, considering maybe not working with you because we have this internal resource that we've worked for 8 years. And, in like a couple examples that have been tough for me specifically, right? It's like, hey, we've audited your work. They're blatantly disregarded strategies, items, things going on in your ad accounts that the person that, even though you've been working with them for 5 years, is just not doing. Like, hey, nobody's naming your campaigns or ads. Like, that's wild, right? And so, even calling those things out, and partners like, listen, we agree with you, but we just have this relationship with this person where, it's a little harder to part ways. Um, I think that become it's a challenge in itself, where it's like, okay, well, maybe we revisit this conversation in a couple months, and if you don't see improvements, then we can come back to you. So it's the most recent challenge is inbound versus outbound. Inbound, deal flows 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks from first communication to sign. Outbound, going booth to booth, all of this work, walking 12 miles a day, at these conferences, you're literally exhausted at the end of the day.
Well, and I hear you. So I heard you say the from inbound to outbound, the
Yeah.
conference stuff that you're running. I also heard you say the caring for the customer that's moving beyond the expertise you've been able to stay in because you're dealing with so many others. You can't be the expert anymore, but and yet you're doing it. I'm hearing like vendor relationship stuff. I'm hearing a change in product offering
Yeah.
matrices in order to do it. So you are trying to do all of this, which was part of the formula for success also when you were 0 to 1 million.
Yes.
And now you're at this stage where you're like, wait a second, I can't just have a team member who's assigned to help me solve this problem. I'm getting to a stage where I need to have the team member fully own the solving of the problem.
Exactly. Yes.
Where they may come to me at times for advice or budget, if it's outside of the realm that we already approved anyway, they may
Yep.
be coming to me, but that they are fully owning it and caring for it, because then we could have 5 people owning those issues, really getting the attention it really needs, instead of having Hemant jumping around trying to take everything, figuring everything out, right, doing the hustle thing.
Yeah, and I think adding to that, right? I think at the beginning, I was saying as you're learning certain processes, you're handing things off. So like partnership, my co-founders, Mikey and Danielle, have a pretty good hands on. For BD outbound, that is much more my focus at the moment because I need to build the process. So we're in the middle of building the process, and the goal is for Ryan to run through
Right.
everything smoothly. For the majority of what we're doing, identifying the shows, setting up the follow-ups, like reaching out, he's handling that. And then there's also this collaboration now between our business development and partnership, where it's like, hey, we've had this partner come in, it goes to Mikey and Danielle, they and the team run the audit, details come back, we provide these the insights back to the client, and then it's like, okay, cool. Yes.
It's a lot, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely a lot. There's always a lot going on.
It's keeping you moving and going. If you were able to build a new system or process around to help your team step up and
Yep.
fully own the various areas and begin to solve these problems, so you could then work on the next thing.
Yes.
What's the value of that to your business? What's the value to get your team fully owning and running these things so you can move on to the next phase?
Uh I mean, there's a lot of value, right? In the sense of like, once, our BD process is running at a smooth ship, then it becomes a numbers game, in the sense where I know if I go to a conference and we speak to 200 brands, we are like in person, we will end up doing discovery calls with 30 of those brands. Of the 30 brands, we will sign 8. Like I know, those metrics broken out, and we have them broken out by uh conference, which means, hey, I have X budget that I can allocate to another team member to help with biz dev that can go. And based on these numbers, try to improve those kind of conversion rates from conference to discovery to deal sign. Um, and then we can continue growing that. What that allows me to do is then go back to partnership and say, hey, what are the next things we need to work on? So hiring, right? Bring like team onboarding, which Danielle and Mikey lead. And then what do we need to do on the creative side? What are like, there are other parts of the business that I can start to focus more attention on, as long as we are hitting the current KPIs on the process I'm setting up at the moment.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, so it gets to this point of saying, all right, how do I really allocate my time? How do I begin to take time away from building the business myself into building my team to build my business? Like, how do I make
yes.
that shift? Right. And normally that's something we start to really feel not so much at 10 employees. We can kind of manage it there. But
Yep.
as you're approaching 25, 30, it starts to scream at you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's that next stage of business. So regardless of the revenue, just think the size of that team is such that if I don't make a shift there, the amount of problems that come to me for a solution are too many.
100%. And that's where I think you start to go from a flat level organization to starting to build a tall structure in place, having management, having a career path, right?
Yes.
For businesses, for a lot of businesses out there, maybe it's just building a career path for your employee, right? From like when someone starts on the first day, within that first week of training, we speak to them about their career path and show them, depending on which roles, like if they're in partnership or business development, right, or creative, like it just depending on the role, we talk to them about, hey, here's the career path that we've built. um, there are other opportunities that will arise as you start to build your skill set and start to grow within the company, but building that career path helps. And so as you get to this taller structure now, hey, like something as simple as, hey, I want to take a vacation. That shouldn't be coming to me. That should be going to your manager, right? So, um, to other things, like what I want to do is talk to my team and understand, hey, X person needs Y help. They've been running a little slow. Oh, why have they been running slow? Uh, it might be a time issue. Well, why do we think they have a time issue? Is it a gap in knowledge? Is it, something going on personally? Is it, your computer's not working that well? This person, it has been operating without two screens, and then it's like, oh, we should ship them a screen, like, like,
Yeah, and we shouldn't find out 4 months later about this, because that's
yes,
4 months of productivity we missed, right? And so,
exactly.
yeah. So this shift, a lot of times people hear like I mean, you said a taller structure, and for the listeners, we're not talking about overhead for overhead's sake. We're talking about the appropriate support so every team member can succeed.
Yes.
Right. So think of it as like inverted pyramid. You got your main workers there, but I can't take care of more than 10 people. That's too much. I can't I can't weekly meet with them, each one of them, and know where they stand, what they need to improve, know about family life and things going on to really be able to help them soar, right? To do just amazing things. I can't do that. In fact, it starts to be pretty hectic after 8. And so
Yep.
if you just start looking at this and it just gets too unruly, and their team members aren't getting the training, no one's there removing the barriers for them, like you just brought up. Hey, what's the problem? How do we help you? When they've got so little time, so little attention, and it's everyone's just produce. It means we're all producing at about 60% capacity. Instead of sticking somebody for those 8 or 10, give them one person, and now we can let them produce at 80% capacity. That 20%, that's 200% we got out of one person. You see the math on that? 200% we got out of hiring one person. That's a good hire, right? And building that for the rest of the team. And
Yep.
but it's hard to see that when we know that it's one more customer in the door, one more customer satisfied, and we stay down in the trenches. If we're in the trenches, we can't see to help the way we need to. So, anyway, not saying it's not great to touch a customer and keep that real live thing, but to own it, that starts to get painful and hard. So, I mean, these are great questions. And then, so people start to say, so what's it really worth? Well, if we start looking across an organization, you mentioned a stage shift from 1 to 3 million. When you've made that, you get a 3x return. And then when you get to where you're really good at building leaders consistently, and of course you've got your marketing, you're doing your branding well, you're doing your sales well, but just to manage the weight of so many people and so many new issues and problems that are coming that we have to fully hand off, not have helpers, owners of the problems. That's another 3x kind of growth to get you from 3 to 10 million. So there's these shifting points. So how do you set the time aside? Here's some thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you're doing in and amongst those. But the first one is a calendar that doesn't move or shift around. I'm going to just say 2 meetings that people don't often think about as being ultra critical. One of them is one-on-ones. It's just so critical. I can't stress it enough, and I can't tell you. Like I have almost, because there's a couple of them who I haven't asked yet, but almost everyone else who's above 10 million that I've worked with in the past or that I'm in touch with now, when they say one of their key meetings that they will never cancel, it's a one-on-one. And so just think, every single week I meet with every one of my team members. If you have too many team members to meet with everyone, then just what you said, you may want to think about another leader being in place, right? Someone else has got to help, or they're not getting the attention. What has to happen in those one-on-ones? One, we understand where they're at personally, if they're up to sharing that. How are you? Tell me how Susan's doing. Tell me how, name whoever their loved one is or their dog or whatever. Find out what's occupying a lot of space in their head? Is it taking all that attention? Can they know that that's okay? And then what can we do to help them? We want to help them any way we can, right? So understanding and knowing that's important. And also that they know that you actually care. Because when they know you care, they think about the things you care about on the off hours too, right? They spend a little more time thinking, planning, fixing problems. Then the second half is, how are you doing in your role? And if we haven't gotten clear here that these three metrics, or two, right? Two or three metrics, if you're hitting them, you're winning. Now we know you've got 15 responsibilities and things that you're working on and all sorts of stuff you juggle, but it's to achieve these two or three metrics. If we don't have that clear for every role, we need to. Then in the one-on-one, we take the time to say, how's that going? And they can report, they can see the number. Yeah, I'm here. Wow, you're doing great. That's awesome. What do you want to work on? Who do you want to become? Remember that career path? Let's talk about the gap between here and there. And how do we help you get there? Because I want you to get there as soon as possible. And so now you get a one-on-one every single week, hearing how they're doing personally, hearing how they're doing in work, and then what they want to do in the future. That's powerful. Or if they're short on it and they're not hitting the metric, you say, oh, so what's your plan? Notice I didn't own it. They own the metric. So what's your plan? They get to tell me their plan. And now we talk about the plan. And I see what I may help with here or there, but they own it the whole time. I'm the helper. They're the ones who own it. And that shift that's an important one. So that's one meeting that I would suggest looking at. What do you do right now, Hemant, with your one-on-ones with your team?
Sure. We also rebuilt this process this year. We have all of our one-on-one check-ins in Monday.com.
Yeah,
You should be writing down your one-on-ones and having like a running doc or a list of kind of what's going on
yeah.
and what
What you're
deliverables.
working on, what the progress looks like. Absolutely.
Yeah, very, very, very important. We typically used to use like a doc format, but we put everything into Monday to just help with cleaning, docs up. And also what that has allowed us to do is one-on-ones that are occurring that are with, managers to other managers or managers to some junior employees, or team members. We have visibility into what's actually happening and what those conversations are like, and that is very important.
Nice.
uh,
Are your team all doing them on a weekly basis?
yes.
That's awesome. That's
Absolutely. It's very, very important. Both from understanding what the goals, like you had mentioned, are, but also personally, like we're people,
yeah.
we're trying, like, the goal is we're showing up with people, we're doing work with people, and we're not machines. People need a break. People need to know that, hey, you should take a vacation. Hey,
Yeah.
like you said, how's Susan doing? Like, how is Susan doing? Like, what's going on? What's exciting you? Summer's coming up. Do you have any travels going on? Like, that bond building is equally to me as important as, hey, what are your KPIs? Because if you're not happy personally, not going to be happy professionally. If you're not happy professionally, it's going to impact you personally. So how do we help you on both sides?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love the system that you put in place around that to ensure that you have visibility, that everybody's getting their one-on-one. I often find one side of the team or another that it's really not happening, or it's not happening very effectively. And so we can't have that. That's a brand promise around the business, within the business, right, to the employees. What's our employee brand promise?
Yeah.
Now, second meeting, there's a quarterly rhythm to look at. And of course, one piece of it on an individual level is to look and say, what does my team member need to be and become? What do they want? How do we plan out that long-term growth? And I love that you're doing your work on the onboarding to say, here's a career path. And this is a simple, great, what's your specific goals that you're working on that on the weekly we'll be checking it. So quarterly, I like to say, let's plan your growth. Let's plan where you're going to. And I'm here to help you. And that I'm here to help you is real. And so this is a change. this takes priority over how am I helping my customer A work. This is a higher value is how am I helping my employee who touches customers 1 through 30 or A through Z if I go 26, right? And so this one employee becoming better and doing better will have a higher leverage return for the business than me spending time with this individual customer. So remembering the math matters for us to set time aside. Uh, do you have you begun to make the shift where you start spending less and less time with customers and more time with leading your team members so that they can deal with the customers?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. Definitely. I've tried to, but there's some client relationship and partner relationships that I'm very near and dear to, um, where I'm very like very much involved, right? And kind of moving s- like there's two parts of it where it's like, hey, listen, we have our team members running a specific, client account, and we're set up in a way where if there are certain challenges in a week, conversion rate, pixels, something, dropped off, performance wasn't that great, like we're set up in a way where, like, myself, Mikey, Danielle, now Jake, we're able to jump in and provide the support and strategy, which at the end it's helping our service. Now, when we continue to scale, we're going to need more directors and managers to be able to help. And uh, the way we're essentially set up is we don't have that many junior level employees, right? We have more mid management, and then getting into the executive level of team members, where we're providing a lot of expertise and support. So it's usually a combination of us brainstorming of like, okay, this is the challenge, these are the KPIs, here are the tweaks we need to make. You have the expert in the platform, but then you have the expert that understands this is how you need, like, that client is running their business and maybe we're not asking the client the right question. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, so uh, and so the problem comes up. The customer needs some help. Your team's already really good at what they do, but on occasion needs a business level strategist to come in to inform the better use of the tools. Am I hearing that
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And
Okay. And
yes.
so we've got a job to figure out how do I build my team members, and yet these are areas they just don't know anything about. So there's a couple approaches. One is to bring in one of the three founders or Jake, right? Bring in one of them. They come into the client meeting and they help figure it out, right? Not a bad way. And the other team members are there, I'm assuming, witnessing, right? So we're kind of learning it in an apprenticeship model kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And they'll learn that, but it may take 3 years to develop them to think strategically about the business at that higher level, which I don't know if you want to wait 3 years in that capacity. Uh, and another way is to take that same problem. It's been presented, and before we get with the customer, we pull together a few of those mid leaders, right, that you've got that can do things really well. And you pose a question. So this takes time. You have to stop and say, great, we've got an important thing. It's going to be taken care of here soon. We're going to have this meeting. And this meeting is question time, where you don't have to give any answers to the team yet, but you get to help them learn to frame the right questions. So you can sit there with them and work through it. Say, all right, they've got this challenge. What do you see
Yep.
as potential, right? Problems within, think about their industry, think about their size. What do we know about their history? What ideas do you have, right? And you're kind
Yeah.
of getting them to think through this process with you. So they begin to think in a bit of a bigger and broader perspective. That may be a helpful piece as you're looking to just say pre-meeting, pre-client meeting where you're not giving answers yet. You're helping them think through it. And if you think they've got good questions, If you think they're thinking about the right thing, you've started to see that. Then when you get to the client meeting, you sit quiet and you have them ask the questions.
Yeah, I think I have to do a lot more of that. So I appreciate that feedback. That's great.
What I love is like I see in you both the ability and desires. Like he's going to do it great too. It's just
Thank you.
the idea is let's get them to ask the right questions. They're smart enough to come up with most of the answers in time, but let's get the right questions going. There are some other things we could talk more about that build the overall strategic thinking of your entire team. There are some meeting rhythms we use on that on the regular, where everybody can be engaged to start to think bigger than their role, to start to think really outside. That's a powerful tool to get your team members thinking like business owners, which is one of the keys if you're going to do the next level. Because right now, I'm going to say probably a half to 2/3 of your time is doing very important $200 an hour work stuff. And we need to get you, and you're doing a third of it at this $1,000, $2,000 an hour work stuff, right? Where you're like, oh yeah, fixing this process is going to make this easier for all of my team to do better. Everyone's going to level it up. Well, soon we need to get you thinking about $10,000, $20,000 an hour work stuff, which we can't until we build enough to do this other work, right? As we continue to move up that scale. And that's where some of the leverage really starts to come from. So great. Wow, just great talk with you. You've got so many great things going on. Really appreciated the time. How would people get in touch with you? Because it sounds like you know your stuff in the digital marketing space, having lived in both sides of this and worked through. How would they get in touch if they wanted to see what it's like to work with you?
Sure. Please check us out at digicom.io. And you can email me directly at Hemant, Hemant, at digicom.io. We have a weekly newsletter. We create daily blog content on around marketing and what's kind of going on, and our goal is to provide education. So please check us out.
Thank you again. That wraps up today's episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of the seven figure journey. Hemant, thank you for being a guest on the show today. We loved having you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And for all of you listening in, just share, do all the things that you need to others can find it. Keep striving, keep learning, keep caring, keep pushing towards your goals. And until next time, Hemant, thank you again.